Hello, race fans. My name is Taylor, and welcome back to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. And today we're talking about a little bit more than the Cup Series, but I'm not doing it alone. I am joined again by my friend Adam Lucas to talk about all the action from Nashville Superspeedway and the SRX race. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining the show again. And are you ready to dive right in?
Absolutely. Let's get into gear and let's get at it.
All right, I like that attitude. Here we go, because it's a big show today for the post race, and we're going to start by talking about the Camping World SRX Series, a general overview. The results are on your screen here, and they'll be followed by their point standings. I want to talk about some impressive key players we had in that race, but Tony Stewart won at Knoxville, Iowa, followed by young guns Hailie Deegan and Ernie Francis Jr. I want to talk about the drivers that impressed us Saturday night, and I think we have to talk about, I think we're in agreement here, Hailie Deegan and Ernie Francis Jr. I want to say this. I think we should preface, the oldest guy in the field is Willie T. Ribbs, who is 66. Bill Elliott is next to that, which he's 65. And then the age gap. We have 19-year-old California native Hailie Deegan. Her background is a lot of short course off-road racing, so I felt she had an advantage over the field. I expected her to do well. And then Ernie Francis Jr. is 23 years old from Florida, and he competes in the Trans Am Series, a 7-time champion, consecutive champion in that series. And he has a few Xfinity starts and is also racing the K&N. Adam, I don't know about you, but I was impressed by these young guns. They really showed up.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how Ernie was able to pick up racing on dirt. I know that's really outside of his element, and I believe only a few weeks ago was his first official race on dirt, and he won the thing.
Yeah.
So kind of a shocker, big time shocker, but he's a heck of a racer. Just from the little bit that I've actually seen him run, that kid's talented.
There is no denying his talent. That was my first official introduction to him and actually watching him race. I guess live and without just seeing it in clips. My goodness, he looks like he was on it. And for me, the SRX series, at first when they introduced Hailie Deegan was going to race and Ernie, I was a little put off by it because I was like, well, this is for the pros. This is for the guys. This is for the superstars. But the fun about this, I think, I don't know if you agree with me, Adam, is we're seeing a competition between knowledge and new. We're seeing a competition between experience, and we're seeing a competition between new experience, something that the new guys can pick up on that the old guys can't. I like the combination. I was skeptical before this week, but I actually really like it. Do you like it too?
Yeah, I mean, heck, the new guys or even some of the older guys who have no dirt experience, they don't know what they don't know. So it's fun to see them learn from a fan's perspective, just to see it happen on TV. It's very natural. It's it's awesome. It's really cool. But even with the veterans, like guys who have run on dirt, like seeing Tony Stewart, he ran through the field completely from after he won the first stage. Yeah, he did. Just wanted to clarify. So yeah, he won the first stage, and then in stage two, heat two rather, he ran from the back up to the front of the pack again. So it was fun to see his dirt expertise in full action on Saturday night. That was really cool.
Absolutely. And a guy that doesn't have a lot of dirt experience actually did well. I want to talk about Michael Waltrip because I feel like I would be a horrible fan of Michael Waltrip in the Waltrip. So I did not mention how well he ran, minus his lack of dirt experience, I would say. And also he mentioned a fun fact. He got into shape for the SRX series, and he mentioned that he wants to prove that he's actually a good driver in this series. And I think personally, and I think we can all agree, he's showing that he is actually a really good driver. He might not have had the maybe NASCAR experience or the NASCAR showing that he had hoped, even though he is a 2-time Daytona 500 champion, and that doesn't come easy to anyone. But he is absolutely showing his skill, and he impressed. I think he almost won the second heat, I would say. He was very close.
He led some laps in heat two, and that was really fun to see him back at the front. It really took me back to my childhood, back to those DEI days and the old number 15 Napa Chevy. It was really, really, really nostalgic to see one of the older guys have his time in the sun.
Absolutely. I wanted to cry. I was so happy to see him do well. And speaking of doing well, let's talk about what the SRX series did well in the dirt. I think it's no secret to anybody that the main beef between NASCAR that Tony Stewart had and the series that he was creating with Ray Evernham was that we can do dirt better. That was the whole thing. They even had a clip of them testing on the dirt in the middle of, I think, the actual Bristol dirt race, if I'm remembering the timing correctly. And I think, you know, he did a lot of talking. I think he's, again, he's walking the walk. Adam, I want to ask, what do you think they did really well in this race? And what do you think they still maybe struggle with? What could they do better in their first experience live on the dirt?
The first thing I noticed was utilizing Brad Doherty. They utilized him a lot more in the second race compared to the first race. And I really like the fact that they didn't use some random caution. I really,
Yes.
that bugged me about race one was, oh, let's just throw a random flag. I get it. I understand that. But like for dirt, I think there's enough uncertainty with how drivers are going to be able to like constantly run their lap almost perfectly without, you know, getting a little out of hand, especially if you're Paul Tracy, who had a rough night to say the least.
Yeah.
That was probably, I don't know if it was a big shocker, but it definitely was a big surprise. I think every restart they had, he hit the wall coming to the green flag.
It was about every restart.
Yeah,
I would say, yeah.
And I mean that probably was the biggest thing I noticed that they did better was they utilized Brad Doherty.
Is there anything you think they could have done better? Something that they struggled with maybe this go around that they didn't previously, or something that you picked up on yet again?
Bill Elliott's car seems to be the gremlin of the bunch. I really want to see Bill be able to drive to his full potential. I mean, we know he still has it. But something's just wrong with that car, and I really hope that they either get him a different car or they can resolve the issues that keep plaguing him in the first two races.
Yeah, that was the point. If you weren't going to mention it, I was definitely going to. I think before I heard Michael Waltrip was joining the series, the first thing that piqued my interest was definitely Bill Elliott, because I came into NASCAR as a Chase Elliott fan, and I was like, I can finally see awesome Bill from Dawsonville race. I can see that. And then, of course, he had the same issue happen with his car the last race that happened this time. And I really do hope that they can figure out those issues, because I know I speak for, I think, everyone when I say this. We want to see him race. We want to see him do well. We want to see the, I guess, older end of the series there with, as I said, he is the second oldest gentleman in the field. I want to see him race. I want to see what he's got. Because like you said, Adam, we think he still has it. He's able to race. So why not? And I think we as the fans deserve to see Bill Elliott race for sure. And I also want
to. I think everybody wants to be able to scream, "Come on, awesome Bill from Dawsonville, be $1 million Bill again!" I really, really, really want that again, so bad.
And those exact words. Words.
And the exact same accent. It has to be just like that.
Absolutely. I got to put on my Southern drawl then if I got to do that. And I hope I can see a race at some point. I have no doubt this series will come back next year. I really hope it does, because so far it is a success right off the bat. So that is going to close out the SRX discussion. You know, they did a great job with their broadcast this time. Again, the coverage was awesome. They made the numbers bigger. I think their first time on the dirt was a success, and I'm so excited for them to return to the dirt at some point this season and come back on the track Saturday. I believe the next race is Saturday evening again on CBS, so I'm very excited. But now we got to go to the NASCAR side of things. Let's talk a little bit about the Truck and Xfinity series. And usually on this show, you know, though I watch the races, I usually don't talk about them on this show specifically, but this time it's very important because, as we all know, we returned to Nashville Superspeedway for the first time since 2011, at least for the Xfinity series and the Truck series. The Cup series have not been there before, or it was a very long time ago. So we're going to talk about the Truck and Xfinity series right now, a brief overview before we get into the reason why we're talking about it, talking about the track conditions and what we noticed. So with the Truck series, the scores or the finishing lineup is on your screen right now, the top 10. I want to shout out Derek Kraus of the Truck Series. He had his first career pole and his first stage win. He was third in stage 2. And I want to take time to congratulate him. I had the privilege of interviewing him and meeting him last week with my friend Zachary Bell. He was a very nice guy, was super excited for Nashville, thought he had a great shot, and he really did. Very impressive for him. And then congrats to Ryan Preece. Adam, Ryan Preece won that truck race. How exciting was that for you to see him win? And it was his debut too.
It was his debut, and if you would have had a camera inside of my living room, Yeah, I was excited. I was jumping up and down, yelling. That was really good to see him finally get an opportunity to showcase his talents. I mean, we know he has talents. If you follow him on the modified circuit, he still is a heck of a competitor. Wins all the time. Always is in the top five. So it was fun to actually see him in be successful and cap it off with a win, first time out.
Absolutely. And that for me just shows that he does have the talent and the right equipment. He can do some really good stuff. And there was a very exciting battle at the end. You didn't know who was going to win it. It was between Priest, Grant Enfinger, and Todd Gilliland. And it was a phenomenal end of the race. And then we're going to go to the Xfinity Series because, again, I think a pretty phenomenal end to that race as well. As the track started to kick in, the driver started to figure it out. Kyle Busch gets his 100th Xfinity Series win in an amazing feat that only a few drivers have been able to complete in all the series combined, like a very small list. And so I guess my question to you, Adam, first off, what does this mean to the sport to have a 100-time series winner? And also kind of the question on everyone's mind, Kyle Busch said that he would quit the Xfinity Series after he reached that 100 win mark. Do you think he's actually going to quit?
For hitting the 100 win mark, that is incredible. That is a feat you rarely see, and I believe the only other driver that is even close to him is Mark Martin, and he doesn't even have 50. So
Yeah.
just think, Kyle Busch doubled that amount. So it's incredible, and actually being able to like see some of those wins in person. Growing up in the Charlotte area, it was kind of, oh, if we go see the Xfinity race, it's going to be either Kyle Busch or Carl Edwards, and usually Kyle Busch would come out on top. So it was fun to be a part of seeing him get to that milestone this past weekend. And for the sport in itself, I mean, it's incredible that someone can win 100 races when the competition is still very, very tight, even for the Xfinity Series. But to answer your second question, I don't know. I think a lot of the Xfinity drivers, the current Xfinity drivers, like to race against him. It's kind of a testing stick for them where they can see, all right, what can we do better to get to that Kyle Busch level? Because now everybody's going to be setting him as the mark. How can we get to 100? How can I get to 100? So I don't think we've seen the last of Kyle Busch. I don't think it's going to be an issue for him finding sponsorship. I found that really funny during his post-race conference about how he said, well, we're not sold for next year. But I think, Joe Gibbs can pull some strings, especially using that 100 win. Let's get to 101,
Yeah.
102, 3, 4, 5. Heck, let's get to as many as we can.
Yeah, I think he's not done. And if he says he's done, I think he's going to still race one or two in there. And the interesting comment you made is the drivers actually like that. And when I interviewed Derek Kraus last week with Zach, which is on his channel, I'll link it down below. He actually talked about, because we asked him the same question, like, as a driver, do you like having the cup racers? Do you like having the more experienced guys running in the field? And he said from a driver's perspective, he mentioned he really did. It was a challenge. And he mentioned kind of specifically, not like quoting him word for word here, but it says something about yourself if you're able to beat Kyle Busch, if you're able to beat a Chase Elliott if he runs in the truck series. And for the drivers, it is a major deal. It can get sponsorship. It elevates you to the next level if you're able to beat someone to that caliber. So for me, I don't think he's necessarily done full time. For the driver's benefit, I know a lot of fans don't like it. I'm on the fence. I see both sides of this issue here, if you consider it an issue. But I definitely don't think he's done. And I think it would benefit the drivers if he stayed in and doing a little part-time, a little here or there. It may be a little less than before, but if he still competed, I think that would be awesome. But a big congrats to Kyle Busch on that 100 win mark. Super impressive. And I would say another impressive thing as we go to the Cup Series. We're going to talk about the winner here, but now it is time to line up the field yet again to the rear, where Quinn Houff, Eric Jones, William Byron were sent to the back of the pack for unapproved adjustments. And also adding to that list, right before the race, the green flag dropped, Ryan Blaney had to go to pit road to fix some damage to the car, so he was dropped to the back as well. And now for our results. There's no surprise. I'm going to probably say this week after week, but we have Kyle Larson yet again winning. This is his third straight race winning in a row. And I don't think a lot of people talked about this, but he had a deal with his sponsor for the race, Valvoline, to donate $5 to every lap Kyle Larson completed at Nashville Superspeedway. And they were also going to add on $5,000 if he finished inside the top 5. Well, it's a given. He's going to finish inside the top 5. So in total, if I did my math right, he has a total donation to the Kyle Larson Foundation, his foundation, of $6,500, which is a pretty neat deal between the two. I think that is excellent that his win went towards a great cause. So that is awesome for Kyle Larson. But we're not going to spend too much time talking about Kyle Larson. We know how good he is. So I'm going to also put on the screen the points standings, because according to Seth Edgert on Twitter, I noticed this really interesting fact, Adam. Stay with me here. Denny Hamlin, 4 races ago, he had a 101-point lead over second place. After 4 races, get this, the lead has shrunk to 9 points over second place, Kyle Larson. How incredible is that, 1? And 2, are you concerned for Denny Hamlin now?
I'm concerned with the Toyota camp in general. Their performance since mid-May has fallen off steadily. It's almost week after week. There's a Joe Gibbs car that's having an issue, usually the 19. I seem to, on the podium finish side of picking, I always pick Truex, and he would somehow find a way to lose. So I definitely think if I was the number 11 camp, I would be a little concerned. I wouldn't be hitting the panic button necessarily, but I would be a little concerned. I think if they don't consistently get the top 10s that they were getting at the beginning of the season, or top 5s rather, they might be having to push the panic button before we get to Daytona. Not saying that they're not going to get into the playoffs, but a win right now probably would put a little bit of water on the somewhat smoldering fire.
Yeah, I would say a win obviously guarantees you get in. It's going to calm some nerves there over there at the 11 camp. But we're going to talk a little bit more about JGR later, because we're going to talk a little bit more outside the top 10 of drivers that may be impressed or disappointed. But I will say Kyle Larson, a very impressive run. The best I've seen in my time with NASCAR, the most impressive dominance ever in my time as a NASCAR fan. I wanted to give some perspective here. Adam, is there a driver that you could maybe compare this dominance to, if any, or someone that a driver you can relate to in your time as a fan that had something of a similar run going for them?
Yeah, absolutely. My very first year of watching NASCAR was 1998, and Jeff Gordon. This is extremely reminiscent of his 98 season, where he won just race after race after race after race, it felt like. And if he wasn't winning, he was contending for the win. So in a way, Jeff Gordon's crazy winning year of 1998 is how I became a fan, besides liking his Rainbow Warrior car, which was awesome. Yes, absolutely. Got to show off the goods. But yeah, I think as for the sport, for the younger fans who are watching and starting to get involved, I think a lot of them they're gonna kind of flock towards being a Kyle Larson fan, Kyle Larson supporter, buying that number 5 merchandise, getting the die cast. That's what got me hooked. Was falling in love with the little Matchbox 164 die cast of Jeff Gordon. I can easily see a 5-year-old kid right now telling their father, saying, "Hey, Dad," or "Hey, Mom, I want that car. Can you get it for me?" And that's going to get them hooked for life. So I think it's really magical, and I think we need to appreciate it and really just take it in for what we're watching. It's incredible.
It doesn't happen that often with a person or a driver or a team, even if we're talking Hendrick Motorsports as a whole, that dominant. And it's really, as much as it can be annoying to see a driver win week after week after week, it's also just a testament to their skill. It's impressive. It is ridiculous. So congrats to Kyle Larson on this impressive run. May it continue further. May we see more history being made. But now, enough about Larson. Officially, we're going to talk about the rest of the guys inside the top 10. And we're going to break it down a little bit more than usual, because this top 10, in my opinion, it's a little unusual. It's not a top 10 that we see on a week-to-week basis, or maybe a top 10 that we haven't seen in a long time, because there's a lot of new faces in the top 10 that I'm very refreshed about. And a lot of them, have this manufacturer on their car, hence the Ford, hence the Kevin Harvick for this video. So let's talk about it. Second place, we're already going to stop and talk about this guy. Ross Chastain. Can you believe that? Second place.
Huge for the old watermelon man. I tell you, it's fun to see Chip Ganassi racing as a whole, not just him, but Kurt Busch. They're coming in swinging every weekend, it seems like. If they're not contending for the top 10, they're right there knocking on the door. And heck, Ross was going for the lead. Not that he was going to catch Larson, because Larson was in his own zip code. But hey, he was the best of the rest. And that's pretty good.
Absolutely. I think a win is coming for him soon. I think his best shots, we know that he's a good road course guy. We know that will do whatever it takes on a super speedway race. And I think maybe if it's not this season, is some point in his career, very, very soon, we're going to have a win from him, and it's going to be great. And I hope he has a watermelon on standby at this point, because the stats just get better and better and better week after week. I have a love/scare relationship with Ross Chastain. I don't call it a love-hate, because some weekends he scares me a little bit because he's very gutsy. I could say the same about Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But honestly, like, a win is coming for Ross Chastain. He has been so impressive these past few weeks, and this just goes to prove something good is happening for that team over there. Let's move to a third place, William Byron. I don't want to talk about that too much, so we're going to gloss over it, because William Byron is the guy we expect to be in the top 10 week after week at this point, with his impressive stats at the beginning of the season with consecutive top 10 runs. So we're going to go to fourth place. A name I think, Adam, we would not expect at this point in the season to have in the top 10, let alone the top 5. Eric Almirola wins the pole for this weekend, by the way, mind you, and finishes 4th. What do you have to say about this? Because I'm a little speechless at this point.
In all honesty, I think it has to do with the package that we ran at Nashville, because not only did Eric perform well, his teammate that you are so proudly wearing also had a really, really good finish. As a matter of fact, I think you finished right after Eric.
Oh, yes, he did.
There you go.
Exactly. Yeah, he did super well. This is his best points race finish of the season. And like Adam mentioned, SHR as a whole, I don't know what special juice they were drinking. I've used that term so many times this week when we've done the Twitter spaces and everything, but they drank something special this weekend, because each and every one of them performed. And I will say the ones you won't see in this top 10 mix are Cole Custer and Chase Briscoe. And that is because, and we'll talk about this when we go down the line, talking about what else we noticed about the race, but there were some brake issues. And unfortunately, that plagued Chase Briscoe. Cole Custer had a brake issue, but it was deemed mechanical because he didn't wreck out. So he was able to fix the car, come back on the track, and finish in 30th. But as a whole, SHR did amazing. And that leaves us going to Kevin Harvick, finishing in 5th, proudly repping the throwback scheme for Kevin Harvick. And Kevin Harvick is usually the guy we see running in the top 10 and getting the momentum going for Stewart-Haas Racing. So nothing necessarily new for Kevin Harvick, but a better run than we've seen in the past few weeks. I think, could you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in all honesty, when we ran a package similar to the one we ran at Nashville, the 750 horsepower low downforce package, Harvick was knocking heads off. I remember 2017, he ate the competition at Atlanta. He was running a line no one else could run. And that was kind of my thinking was, wow, maybe that just suits his driving style. Maybe he has better throttle control, braking, and all that. And I think that may have played into why we had, as you mentioned, so many brake issues. I think some of the younger guys who had the brake issues, maybe it's just they're not used to that type of package. So it was really fun to see Harvick running in the top 5 again. And it wasn't like he just showed up at the end. He had the old Gravedigger car up there pretty much the entire race.
Yeah, it was oh gosh, I'll have it up on the screen for you all here. It was a beautiful paint scheme. They revealed it. It was like kind of the Father's Day tribute. Keelan Harvick like introduced it and everything. It was amazing. So that's up on your screen there. Great weekend for Stewart-Haas Racing. That is it for them, though, in the top 10. Let's go to the 6th position. And yet again, we're just going down the list of just impressive names here. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I thought at one point he was going to lead this race, honestly, and he was going for like the lead. He was going for the win. This is his second best finish of the season, and I was just wildly impressed with him because he's a guy we either only see do well at super speedways or he's kind of in the back, not back of the pack, but middle of the pack. But he's done it really well this season, actually.
Yeah, Ricky really impressed me. And going back the week before the Nashville race, I saw a video of him crashing at Nashville at least 5 or 6 different times. That's weird to think that he'd come back and he'd run in the top 10 this weekend in a Cup car. But then again, that was 11 years ago. But it is fun to see. It's fun to see Ricky actually being able to show that he's a good driver. He's really a good driver. He's just got to know when to engage and when not to engage. Sometimes I think he gets a little, I don't even know what the right word would be, but he just, I don't know, he gets impatient, thinks he's got to go for the gap when we're on lap 15 at 200. He's got to go for it. It's like all or nothing every lap. And I think a lot of drivers that have been around the sport long enough have realized that, hey, you can't go for that gap 100% of the time, all the time. You got to know when to show them and when to fold them.
I was going to use that reference.
Paraphrase the late Kenny Rogers.
Yes, absolutely. I think that has been my consistent worry with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is he doesn't necessarily know when to pull, he doesn't know when to push back. But this weekend, he played his cards just right. He did an impressive run. He ran pretty much in the top 3. Like, he finished pretty much where he ran the whole day, which was very impressive. Another impressive run, and we're just going to keep using this throughout the top 10. The word impressive. Daniel Suarez continues, and I cannot stress enough how amazingly he has done this season. Little expectations on his team, too, with a new team, Trackhouse, Pitbull, whole new vibe with them over there. And honestly, like, it feels like this team has been around for a while. They're just putting out consistently great finishes, and this is the second best finish of the season for him as well.
Yeah, mi amigo Daniel doing a very muy bueno job. I'll tell you, that whole team is clicking, and that's something that you kind of don't see with new teams right off the bat. This season, they have been right around the top 10. This weekend, they got into the top 10. So it's fun to see. It's fun to see new teams and a new group of guys be able to be successful and not just run around at the back and do nothing, and you never hear them or see them. And just to see what Pitbull is actually doing with the team, he's pretty involved with the team. My understanding, him and Justin are in constant communication. Justin Marks, that is, they're in constant communication about the team operations and what to do next, sponsorship deals and all that. I mean, I believe they mentioned this weekend that they want to move their race team to Nashville, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, I did not hear that. That would be awesome, though.
I believe so. It was during one. They were in downtown promoting the sponsor. I'm not sure if it was officially said, but I do know it was dropped that they want to move the race team to the Nashville area.
That would be amazing. And Nashville is such a great market, and obviously welcome NASCAR back with open arms and amazing celebration for this weekend. They're clicking on all cylinders over there. Daniel Suarez, I'm not sure he gets a win this season, but at least he is contending for wins, and maybe, I mean, in general, just like a top 10 finish, which is the most you can ask for a brand new team. Honestly, that's pushing the limit of what you're asking for a brand new team. Speaking of brand new, let's move to someone who's not brand new to the sport, Kurt Busch. Finally, I feel like we're seeing him run very well. I think things, like we mentioned, things are picking up at Chip Ganassi as the season goes on, and Kurt Busch finishes in 8th place. He also got a stage point in stage 1, winning that stage, and we'll talk about why, the elephant in the room, a little later when we finish this lineup here. But another impressive run from Kurt Busch. I'm going to move on to Christopher Bell, if that's all right with you, or do you want to say something about Kurt Busch?
I mean, it's great seeing Kurt back in the top 10. Once again, the guy I saw in my childhood, seeing him now get long in the tooth and still be successful, it's really reassuring that he's still got the juice, especially to see what his plans are for 2022 and beyond.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on with Kurt Busch right now. We'll see where he ends up next season. And with the rumors about the 2311 move, I talked about this on a previous show. So we'll see what happens with Kurt Busch, but he's knocking out those impressive finishes still, as veteran as he is in the sport. a driver who's not as veteran in this season is Christopher Bell. And I will say, I don't want to say this as a negative or downing the success Christopher Bell had this weekend, but I didn't expect him to finish in the top 10 because JGR as a whole struggled on Sunday. And I'm shocked any of them finished inside the top 10. If any, like Kyle Busch, I thought he was going to win the race. I mentioned this last podcast we had, and his car just faded. I think he had some damage on one of the left rear tires. The lettering was off. And he just struggled. So to have any one of their cars finish inside the top 10, and let alone have it be Christopher Bell, the youngest on the team, the least experienced on the team in the Cup Series, was very impressive. And my theory for this, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, Adam, or if you think this is true, a little theory here is the experience the other guys have at Nashville, or what they know already in their careers, I think hurt them. Sometimes what you don't know can't hurt you, and Bell's lack of experience on the track, I think you're going to have to compare it to other tracks, other information. But yet again, too, he was one of the guys, along with Kurt Busch, and Chase Briscoe, who ran pretty well this weekend before he was taken out of the race, who actually tested on the Nashville track this season to figure out that tire combination. So I think that actually ended up helping him this weekend.
I think so too, especially with not knowing what you don't know. You mean Kyle Busch, plenty of experience at Nashville. Martin Truex Jr., a lot of experience at Nashville. And Denny Hamlin, I don't know exactly how many Xfinity races he ran there previously, but of all of the JGR guys to be in the top 10, was not expecting Christopher Bell to be in the top 10. Was expecting him to be in the top 20, but a top 10, no. I really thought the experience would play a factor, but for Bell, I also can see why he may have gotten that top 10. It's all about gas and brake, not just hold it wide open. You had to use the brake this week, and I think that was one of his strong suits, was he was able to maneuver the best with corner entry and being able to just kind of go on the brake, go off the brake, be able to hammer it down.
Absolutely. I think it did actually suit his racing style a little bit, I would say, or what he's familiar with. And so with Christopher Bell in 9th, finally, Joey Logano in 10th. I have nothing to add about Joey Logano at the moment. I think we expect him to be in the top 10. So we're now going to look outside the top 10. And I'm going to ask Aiden to name a driver that impressed him. And then we're going to talk about two drivers that disappointed us a little bit this week and we expected a little bit more from. So to start with, Adam, what is one driver outside the top 10 that had you wowed? How did you impressed?
Surprisingly, it was Corey LaJoie in the old Spire number 7. They have been coming week in and week out with really good equipment to the track. And I guess they've been working really hard at the shop to just be able to get 2 cars now that have been pretty decently competitive, or at least not being a back marker. So like they've been able to run maybe not necessarily in the top 20, but around the top 20, being able to contend for a top 20. So yeah, and I mean, Corey's a great driver. Don't get me wrong by any means. He's doing all he can with Spire's equipment. Spire doesn't have the worst equipment. They don't have the best, but they are getting some help from some higher up Chevy teams, which is good to see. Share the wealth a little bit here and there.
Yes.
But yeah, so Corey, I was really impressed with Corey's run this past weekend.
I will say the driver that impressed me, I might one-up you with how odd this might sound, but Anthony Alfredo is actually my guy I'm going with. The driver of the 38 Front Row Motorsports machine.
Fast Pasta, eat it up.
Fast Pasta.
Yeah.
I mean, love the nickname, and I was like, Fast Pasta. He was fast this weekend. This is his second best finish of the season in 17th, and he's not a guy we talk about often, and I think the spotlight needs to be shown on him just a little bit more. He's a great guy, a great racer if he's given the right equipment. He's moved up into the series very fast, too. His career progression seems to be very quick. He was in the Truck Series, and then 2019, he moved from the ARCA Menard Series, 2019. And then he moved to the Xfinity Series in 2020 part-time for RCR, and now he's in the Cup Series full-time. Like, that is a very quick progression, and he seemed to have really kept up because other drivers I know would just fall flat on their face. He's done very well, and he's very fun to watch on the track on weekends. So I was very excited to see him do well this weekend at Nashville. And now we have to, of course, talk about the negatives here, Adam. We have to talk about two drivers that unfortunately did not live up to our expectations this weekend. I'll let you go first with your two drivers that you want to talk about here.
First off, let's continue on with the trend of, oh, we thought experience was going to rue the day. Well, it totally bit this driver in the butt, technically. Brad Keselowski,
Yeah.
extremely disappointed. They were just not a factor at all. I don't know if they missed the setup or if he was just having an off day, the whole team was, but just nothing was clicking or gelling for him. It was really just bad.
I will say with Brad Keselowski, I do love Brad, and I feel so bad because I think for the past 3 weeks on the show, he has been my guy that has disappointed me, and I hate that that's for Brad Keselowski. But I will say, I agree with you, Adam. Experience kind of bit him in the butt. And then the other driver you wanted to mention doesn't have a lot of experience on this track.
No, and his team doesn't have a lot of experience in general, being their first year. Bubba Wallace, man, just they cannot catch a break to save them. And
No.
I don't want to hit the okay panic button, but we're getting pretty daggum close to having to push that button. There seems to be they get halfway through a race and the wheels fall off or he spins out. There's something wrong, and I don't know what it is. I hope they can resolve it because when Bubba is running well, everyone's running well. And when I mean everyone's running well, TV ratings, fans, publicity, everything. It all gels when Bubba's doing good, everybody's doing good. So we gotta get Bubba in 2311 back to being consistent.
Absolutely. That is so important for the sport. And that is a lot of pressure to put on Bubba Wallace. And he's not a new face to pressure. He's had to deal with it a lot during his career. And for him, I want success for him and his team. Like you said, it falls flat kind of in the middle of the race. And another guy who's on my negative pick this week, another guy who seems to run really well at the beginning and then it just falls flat. Matt DiBenedetto. And I love the guy. He's like top 5 favorite drivers. And I kind of am thinking I can't be too upset about this because this is his first points race with a new crew chief, because for the All-Star race, they replaced the crew chief for the rest of the season, Jonathan Hassler. And they're trying to figure things out. But man, the trend continues of he runs well in the beginning and then it just falls off. So I'm not sure why this keeps happening. I hope this season they can start getting things to click. But yet again, we don't know Matt DiBenedetto's future, that he's going to stay with that team or not. So maybe a little too late, as I mentioned before when we talked about the crew chief change. But hopefully things can get better. If not soon, at least at the end of the season, we'll see Matt DiBenedetto have some good finishes. My final driver, we talked about how Joe Gibbs Racing had a pretty disappointing weekend. Nothing more disappointing and shocking than Martin Truex Jr. because, my God, I do not know what happened to that team, but they qualified 35th and they were 29th in practice. Setup was wrong. I'm not in the team. I don't have the inside scoop. Do not know what happened, but that is not what I expected for Martin Truex Jr., who is a championship caliber driver. I don't want to get too negative or harp on that too much, but they just missed the mark. And I think too, maybe Hendrick Motorsports, I think besides Kyle Larson, missed the mark a little bit this week and didn't really keep up the momentum they were carrying. But Joe Gibbs Racing, my gosh. But I want to talk about the elephant in the room now, since I mentioned Hendrick Motorsports a little bit. Chase Elliott, post-race, he was disqualified. A section of the NASCAR rule book states that if a car has 3 or more unsecured lug nuts in a post-race inspection, it will be resulted in a disqualification. Elliott's car did not have 3, did not have 4. It had 5 loose lug nuts on the car. I do not know how that happened. It's insane. And actually, there was an instance in 2017 which kind of sparked the whole lug nut debate, the whole movement to get stricter rules on that at Dover, when 2 loose wheels due to loose lug nuts resulted in like huge implications. And I think what drivers was it for? Can you expand on this? I think it was
I know Kyle Busch was the final straw with it on the Cup race on the Sunday at Dover back in 2017. There was no rule about the lug nuts, except at the end of the race, I believe you had to have 5 secured. But during the race, there were teams that were cutting down their pit times to sub 11 second pit stops, with Joe Gibbs being one of those teams they had their, well, this is also before they had the modified air wrenches. So they had their modified air wrenches and they were only tightening maybe 3 to 4 lugs on each tire. So they were doing some blazing fast pit stops. It was some of the craziest stuff you'd see on pit road. And I always remember that the Joe Gibbs pit crews had a very distinctive sound to their wrenches.
Really?
It was really different compared to everyone else's. So that was another rule that ended up being implemented. It was a universal gun that was given out by NASCAR. It wasn't the teams supplying their own. But yeah, so they didn't secure enough lugs. He leaves pit road, tire goes wailing off into the wall. He's riding around on three wheels. Yeah, it was crazy. The announcers were like, what in the world's happening? But we all pretty much knew they did not get enough lugs on there, or the ones that they did get on, they didn't secure them properly.
So 2017 really started the lug nut movement of getting things differently, starting the rules to get a little differently. So there was more implications. And here's the implications and impacts for Chase Elliott from this weekend. Obviously, Pocono starting position with the metrics now in NASCAR with their calculations, because we don't have qualifying. It's based on a few things. And one of the key factors in that calculation is your previous week's finishing position. And because Chase Elliott's finish was disqualified, was the last one to finish on the standings. Now, I'm assuming that his starting position in the Pocono first race of the doubleheader is not going to be great outside the top 10. So that's implication number one for that team. The second one is that his stage win and any stage points that he earned taken away, along with all the other stage points and points he earned during the day. And that stage win, plus that playoff point that goes with that, goes to Kurt Busch now, increasing his standings and thus lowering Chase Elliott's standings in the playoff picture. And then answering the question for you all, because there was a lot of debate on social media about whether Chase Elliott's crew chief is taken away for 4 weeks, if not, because the rules are a little iffy. Well, I'm here to clarify some things. There is a quote on your screen from an article back in 2017 that actually talks about the whole Dover incident. In summary, basically, it says if a tire came off during the race due to loose lug nuts, suspension can be dished out if NASCAR determined the wheel was not installed correctly. And because Chase Elliott had lug nuts that weren't installed correctly, yet the wheel stayed on the car, the tire stayed on the car, that means that team members will not face suspension, but they have a disqualification of the points for the day. I also think it's important to know, Adam, I don't know if you read this article, but this week, actually after this inspection, NASCAR started to talk about that they're cracking down on Hendrick Motorsports in the post-race inspections. The VP of competition of NASCAR, Scott Miller, was asked on the Sirius XM NASCAR radio if the inspection process has become more difficult for Hendrick Motorsports. And to that, he said it does, both externally and internally. He goes on to say, though, that they're always diligent with the other teams, when you have a team that dominant, you really have to look a lot closer to see maybe there's some cheating, maybe there's some funky stuff going on. If it's not raw talent, it's got to be something else. And Adam, that was a lot to unpack. We had a disqualification. We have, the VP and everyone in NASCAR really honing down on Hendrick Motorsports, trying to figure out what they have above everyone else. Is there anything you want to add before we expand our lens to look at the whole weekend?
For this cracking down on Hendrick, I believe a few years ago when it was Joe Gibbs, when the shoes were on their feet, NASCAR was looking into them pretty thoroughly. But I think that just comes with the territory. If all your cars are performing and they're consistently performing in the top five, all four of them, I do think you're going to get scrutinized extra. It comes with the territory. If you're winning, you're doing something right. Hopefully it's not something out of the book. Or if it is, and it's giving you an advantage, we might have to, have a little talk about that behind closed doors with NASCAR officials. But I mean, if they keep doing it and they're doing it within the legal book, then everyone's got to pick up their game. Everyone else in NASCAR is going to have to. Otherwise, it could go on and on and on and on. That happens. We're gonna slowly turn into Formula One. We're gonna have the Mercedes team dominating every race, or the Red Bulls dominating every race. But that's another discussion for another day.
Yes.
For right now, Hendrick getting scrutinized a little more, that's fine with me.
I agree, because at some point a streak dies. Streaks always die at some point. But when you have a dominance this intense, with all the drivers doing extremely well at some point or another, it raises some questions. So I do agree with NASCAR's kind of I guess not call, but their decision and kind of their mindset of maybe we need to look closer and see if there's something going on. But that is a look inside the top 10, outside the top 10, talking about the disqualification and results of the race. Now let's go down the line discussing other major talking points for this weekend outside the driver's lens. I want to talk about NBC's return to start. Now, they came back. Everyone was super excited for NBC to come back and broadcast because I know a lot of the fans were not liking Fox. We were getting a little tired of it. I want to mention, I love how they focused on the mid-pack racing because I think with Fox, I feel like that was lacking. We saw Larson lead for laps and laps and laps. I'm like, okay, that's cool. We know he's leading. We know he has a 5-second, even maybe at one point, a 10-second lead in front of the field. Where's the mid-pack? And I feel like we definitely got that, and it was awesome. I want to ask Adam, like, what did you like about the NBC broadcast, or are there things that you missed from the Fox broadcast? How do you think they did in their return to NASCAR?
NBC as a whole, to start their NASCAR coverage the way they did, phenomenal for the season. It was almost a night and day comparison to where Fox was. They started strong with their coverage. I loved the chemistry between the booth at the beginning of the season, but it got pretty dry and stale by about race 3 or 4. It felt a little too campy with Clint Boyer, Jeff Gordon kind of bouncing off of each other with different chuckles and stuff, and Mike was trying to keep him ordered. But besides that, you got 2 huge personalities. You have a Hall of Famer, Jeff Gordon, and then you have the people's unofficial champion, who isn't named Chase Elliott, who happens to love drinking beer, Clint Boyer. I love him personally. I was a big fan of his when he drove. I like him in the booth, but sometimes he can go on and on and on. But for NBC, it was kind of a breath of fresh air. I'm glad that there's 2 different networks that cover the whole season. I think you need to have, you got to inject some new blood into it to keep it fresh and to keep it new and to keep it engaging, wanting you to come back. And I think NBC did a really good job with it this weekend. Probably the biggest difference I saw was the pit reporters. We had multiple pit reporters. We had, I believe, 4 instead of having 2 like Fox had been utilizing now for the past couple seasons. I like having pit reporters because with this day and age, when you have 40 drivers, if you have 4 pit reporters, they can cover 10 people instead of having 2 pit reporters that got to cover 20 people. So I think it's a blessing in numbers, and you can get more information to the public, to the TV audience rather. And like what you had mentioned was going through the mid pack and being able to see battles throughout. I really think that comes down to everyone in the production truck. I think maybe NBC was just doing a better job this past weekend of, oh, there's a battle there. Oh, there's a battle there. Okay, let's go there. Let's get a split camera here. Let's get a split camera there. It could be from that standpoint. Maybe they were listening to what the fans' feedback has been. I know social media sometimes is a blessing and a curse for television productions. Sometimes they'll take that feedback and they'll utilize it, like the SRX series is doing. Or sometimes they don't listen. They just keep doing it the way they've been doing it for years. And I want to say, if it continues the way it's going, I really think NBC was listening to what the fans wanted to see in a broadcast. And hopefully we can continue that.
All of your points were, if you didn't mention them, I was going to mention them. It was professional. It was refreshing. And the pit reporters also, like Jamie Little and Regan Smith, were spread thin, and there was not a lot of coverage. So that was a highlight for me too. I will say though, there's 2 things I want to mention here. I used to favor the Fox broadcast actually more than the NBC one, because sometimes, at least as the season gets going, in the middle of the season, it can get a little bit like too many cooks in the kitchen. This year with the Fox, there was just way too much going on. The personalities were great, and then it got old, like Adam, you mentioned, and then it became overwhelming. And I don't want overwhelm in a race, but I will say, as much as I love the start of NBC's broadcast, I really do miss Larry Mack. I will say he was the highlight for me.
If NBC could get a Larry Mack or a Larry Mack-esque person rather than Steve Letarte. Steve Letarte's great with what he's doing. But if they can get someone who is constantly doing the strategies and trends of the race like Larry Mack does for Fox, they would set the bar for what you wanted in a race broadcast all the time.
Absolutely. I am in agreement with you on that. I think if they had that added to their coverage, though we already have the 4 pit reporters, leaps and bounds, it would bring NBC's broadcast to a whole new level. It would be like the perfect thing, in my opinion. And then, so that was moment number 1. That was talking about the NBC broadcast. Let's go to moment number 2. We're going to talk about how the track raced. You know, this is their first time coming back in a long time. The track was kind of run down and they had to prepare it. They did a really good job, I think, preparing the track. And there's a few things that we need to talk about. Adam, I'm going to kind of let you lead this section here because you know more about how the track used to run. And also, I want you to, if you can, tie in what we saw in the Xfinity and truck race too, is how did this track run? What did you like to see? What didn't you like to see? And what did you expect based on your previous knowledge as well?
For starters, this track really used to be a single groove track. It was not really known for having a second competitive groove. I mean, you would almost think it was like a 1.33 mile Bristol where everyone was fighting for the bottom in previous years. But I think with the Goodyear tire test, using the tire dragon on top of the resin, not PJ1, using the resin, that was a key. The resin with the tire dragon and the tire compound that they brought enhanced that second groove where it was actually the favorable lane on restarts. Everyone wanted to go to that lane so they could get a better shot off of turn 2 and get a better entrance onto the front stretch off of turn 4. So what the track prep itself was phenomenal. 10 out of 10. You can't go above it, you can't go below it. 10 out of 10, right on the nose. With not just the track itself, but the facilities, the stands. Probably the worst thing that happened though was there was issues getting into the speedway. They were not anticipating even a crowd that was not 50,000, but it was still a sellout. I'm not exactly sure what the attendance number, like the actual max attendance is at Nashville. I know it's not above 50,000, but there were traffic issues. That would probably be the biggest black eye they had this past weekend, was trying to get to the track itself. But from that standpoint, seeing the temporary stands, it makes me want them to add more permanent stands, but also knowing that Nashville never had stands where the temporary stands were set up. It was always shaped weird. It always had that weird, oh, there's the tower, and then there's like a weird little section here or there. So it always had that weird look, and that's kind of what made Nashville unique to being Nashville, was just it's aesthetics basically. But from a standpoint of them preparing for the Cup race or for a Cup weekend, 10 out of 10, great job.
I would agree. I think they did very well. I noticed that there were a lot of grooves, and the resin really helped with that. I say for every track, if possible, if NASCAR is listening, get rid of the PJ1. Just get rid of it. The drivers don't even like it. The fans don't like it. I think the resin is a better option if it is possible. If you have to keep the PJ1, if that's the only solution, you got to do that. But the resin for me was a highlight. It was super great racing. There was a lot of mid-pack stuff happening, a lot of action, a lot of going kind of back and forth, which could have gotten really frustrating. And I got frustrated at some point seeing guys just flip-flop positions for half the race. But at least it was exciting because you watched them kind of fighting the equipment and fighting the track, which is very refreshing. But fighting the equipment, Adam, the final point I want to bring up before we talk about should we return to Nashville, which I think is an obvious answer of yes, but we're still going to talk about it. I want to talk about the brake issues, because that plagued a lot of teams. A total of 6 drivers were taken out of the race due to brake issues, or shall I say, they had no brakes. There were no issues because they had no brakes. And some drivers also were taken out because they got caught with the debris, the rotor debris that came from the brakes. And during the pit stops too, I know Adam texted me during the race. He's like, look at all that brake dust. And I was like, what? And literally off the tires was dust. They would like shake off the tires as they took them off the cars, and there was just a pile of dust. The guys at the front of the field had less dust because they had a lot less braking they had to do in the middle of the pack. And then the mid-pack guys toasted. Brakes were done. I would say, if anything this weekend, if it wasn't about the facility itself, NASCAR missed the setup on these brakes. And I know, Adam, you talked about how some older drivers might have had the advantage here of knowing how this package works, knowing the braking and which driver did you say this fit their style? I think, did you say Christopher Bell?
It fit the old guys. It fit Eric Almirola and Kevin Harvick at Stewart Haas, because that's when they were consistent. They were either consistent or dominant, like in Harvick's case. The package, I really believe the package itself really played a factor in why we saw so much swapping for positions throughout the field, and then the brake failures themselves. They also, I don't think they were anticipating the high temperatures, because many a time when they would pull the tires off, it was taking them 5 to 10 minutes to even examine the tires, because the rotor or the wheel well itself was so hot from the brake dust and just because it was hot. So yeah, the package I think played a big factor as well. That low downforce and higher horsepower, you're carrying a lot more speed into those corners. And they were dropping anywhere between 30 and 40 miles per hour on corner entry speed. They would go almost 180 into the corner and then break down to 30. Yeah. Some guys were able to get it close to 180. During the race run, they were about the 170, 175, and they were going down to about 135. So a lot of this.
Lots of breaks, lots of stopping and going. And I think that, if anything, that plagued the weekend, but I don't think it plagued our overall experience of this weekend, because the final question before we go to our race rating and close out the video is, should we return to Nashville? I will let you have the floor first, because I think we can already determine this is going to play into our race rating. So I guess in the middle of this, as we ask the question, should we return to Nashville? I'm going to ask you, Adam, to give you a race rating above or below the yellow line. You all know how it works. 50 is the baseline, above is great, below is on the line is like, it was okay. Adam, how did you like Nashville?
Loved it. Really thought it was weird we were going to go back to it a year ago when they made the announcement. Really was impressed with how they were able to resurrect a track that had been sitting vacant for basically 10 years, or sit dormant for 10 years with no racing activities professionally. Above the yellow line, above 50. Not quite perfect. There were still little things we can work on here and there. Obviously, Kyle Larson dominated. There was no real battle for the race lead, so that would be one drawback for it for me personally. And two, just the brake attrition. It was bad. So I'm gonna have to give it. I'll give it 90.
90.
90.
Ooh, that's a good number. I'm very close to that number. I do think NASCAR should return to Nashville, and here is why. Nashville, country music, the atmosphere, NASCAR, peanut butter and jelly, like marshmallow, the Rice Krispies, it just goes together. And it is just such a fun atmosphere. And every fan that was there, the pre-race stuff and everything that was either camping at the track, had an amazing time, and it showed in pictures and videos. And it seems like it could be eventually maybe like a crown jewel event if it goes really well, just because the fans seem to show up for it. It seems to be something special. And that really showed this weekend. I felt like it was more old school racing that I really didn't get to see in my time as a fan so far, but it was battling the equipment, which was super entertaining. And even Larson, there were some questions with Larson on fuel, and even then, even with his lead, which does subtract the race a little bit for me in points a little bit, and also with the brake issues, which did subtract, because there was drivers that were doing really well until their brakes just let go. It really did help my score to see some of the old school racing, seeing them racing the equipment. This is the first sold out race since, like, full sold out race since Daytona in 2020, which is incredible. This is the market. Though I sound really positive about this, the dominance and the brakes hindered this. I'm going to give it an 85%. Though this was an amazing race, and I hope someday, hopefully next summer, I can make my way to Nashville Superspeedway. So those are our race ratings, though. Let us know in the comments below what you would rate this race. And with that, that closes out our weekend at Nashville. I want to thank you all for listening so much to Above the Yellow Line, the show where we talk all about the NASCAR Cup Series. And I want to thank Adam so much for being on the show again. But he's also not done. He'll be back to talk about the Pocono doubleheader with some spicy news updates. So stay tuned for that. Before we sign off, though, Adam, is there anything you want to mention to our audience where else we can find you and your work?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can follow along on Twitter. My Twitter page is at alucas9166. I usually post stuff about racing, all racing, not just NASCAR. Do IndyCar, Formula One, and football. Football is my background. My background is in football video, so I'm always talking about football on there, either the game or behind the scenes work. So yeah, a lot of cool stuff. Give me a follow if you want. If you don't, it's okay. Your loss. Whatever.
I highly recommend following Adam on Twitter, and other places to find me are in the description below, Twitter and the podium finish. But before you check out those links, like this video, hit the subscribe button, tell your friends and family. And while you do that, thank you all so much for watching another episode of Above the Yellow Line. And until next time, we'll see ya.